All right, you ready for this?
Ready.
Hey everyone, this is Tom. So let me welcome back to the Device Talks Weekly Podcast. And once again, if this is your first time here, welcome. Great to have you. We've got a really great discussion for you today centered around ambulatory surgical centers. Actually, Chris Newmarker had this discussion. He spoke with Laura Rector. Laura Rector is the Vice President of Ambulatory Surgery Centers at Smith & Nephew. And they talked a great deal about how Smith & Nephew is approaching the informational or data aspect of ortho. Specifically, how are they using data and using devices to help people recover faster? We've talked a great deal about smart implants, about sensors. Chris has done some great coverage there. This time around, we're going to talk about how Smith & Nephew is really going after the ambulatory surgery center business. So it was great to have Laura Rector on the show. We're also going to have Kaila Krum in. Kaila, of course, is Managing Director of Truist Securities. She's one of our podcast faves. And she's come back to talk about really the two big stories of the week. And you'll hear them both on Newmarker's Newsmakers. The first involving Mike Coyle's decision to step down as CEO of iRhythm, which surprised many, including me. And the second being Medtronic's announcement that it would no longer sell its Heartware HVAD for many unfortunate reasons. And we're going to get into why in the Newmarker's Newsmakers, and we'll also bring Kaila separately into those two items. I'll speak with Kaila first about Mike Coyle, and then we'll talk about Medtronic finding it necessary to pull its HVAD off the shelf. So really big stories for the medtech industry. So we wanted to focus a little more attention on those in our Newsmakers. So it's a great episode. Great to have you here. And if you have not subscribed to this podcast, you can do that on Apple, Spotify, Google, Amazon. We're out there. And before we start this week's episode, I want to remind you that our new episode of Medtronic Talks, our sister publication, dropped on Wednesday. It features Bob White. Bob, of course, is Executive Vice President and head of the medical surgical portfolio. He's president of the medical surgical portfolio, Executive Vice President at Medtronic. And I spoke with Bob, obviously, about that business, but also about his work in blending Covidien and Medtronic together after that major merger a few years ago. So you can find that podcast on devicetalks.com. And like this podcast, you can also find it on all those podcast channels, Google, Spotify, Amazon, Apple. We're out there. So please do check that out as well. Now it's time to bring in my podcast partner, Chris Newmarker, the executive editor of Life Sciences at Mass Device. Chris Newmarker, how are you, sir?
Oh, good. And I just heard the Zoom recording saying that,
this podcast is being recorded, Chris.
It's live, man. Well, it's not really live. It's being recorded. Like, here we are. Oh, man.
Happy Thursday.
Yes, we're doing this on a Thursday. We'll see what our energy level is on a Thursday afternoon.
It is through the roof. Let's go.
Let's do it.
Well, we've got your Newmarker's Newsmakers. I hope it keeps. I hope it doesn't get inundated with more news tomorrow, because this has been a crazy, crazy news week.
It has been a crazy news week. It's been a crazy news day. Yeah, it's just the medtech news gods are just showering the news down right now. So
exactly. So we'll go through the Newmarker's Newsmakers. We brought in a heavy hitter, Kaila Krum of Truist, to comment on our last two Newmarker's Newsmakers.
Yes.
So it'll be less you and I going and more actual insight. So
yes,
happy to. Yeah,
we're having a real expert on versus
as
two dudes who write about medtech.
Two tap dancing dudes trying to.
I wonder what this is all about.
Could be good, could be bad. All right, let's go into
time will tell.
Time will tell.
That's always the fallback. Time will tell.
Number 5 on the Newmarker's Newsmakers.
Well, number 5 on the list is this is a surprise. FDA wants more money.
We all want more money, Chris, but what are they going to do with more money?
They want more power. Yeah.
Well,
they want money and power.
They've been doing a lot lately.
They've been doing a lot. And from what I've heard from people inside the industry, I mean, they've been getting, some credit for, being a lot more easier to work with. I mean, definitely still regulating, trying to make sure our devices are safe and effective. But, I don't know. Have you heard the same type of input that FDA is easier to work with now for people in the industry?
Yeah, absolutely. No, I mean, if anyone listened to the podcast last week, and we referenced it earlier last week as well, Josh Mackauer, who did a survey of the FDA back in 2010 and basically built the case for where the FDA was falling short and holding back innovation and kind of helped foster some change. It was an interesting story as to how he decided to do it. And he was meeting with the FDA. He was offering the complaints that a lot of others in the industry were. And finally, the FDA rep was like, you know what? I'm tired of hearing your complaints. Just show me data. If the data matches what you're saying, we'll see what we can do about it. And he did a surveyed a couple hundred companies, brought the data. An internal survey of the FDA kind of confirmed it. So it has been. In fact, we'll talk. We've talked about the surveys being redone by a group of the UCLA, and Josh thinks it's a great idea, but he says the real survey that needs to be done is with reimbursement. Yeah. And we've talked about this ad nauseum, but the FDA has been, I think, a better partner for sure. Yeah,
now it's like kind of the issue of like trying to get it paid for. So that's kind of where the companies are wrestling. But, some of the things they're asking for in their budget request, I mean, at least at first glance, look like things that people in the industry would potentially like. I mean, they want an extra $21.6 million for a new resilient supply chain and shortages program that's gonna get involved with boosting our supply chain resilience, inside this country, so that we don't realize we have shortages of things, next time we have a huge health emergency in this country, which is hopefully when I'm playing bingo in a nursing home. But I mean,
and killing it,
man. I won the quilt. Woo!
Damn it, Newmarker got the G that he needed.
I remember the last pandemic in 2020.
But it's interesting now that we're talking about this. They're asking for, so they have a $6.5 billion budget. Right. They're asking for an additional $676 million.
Yeah, give or
which,
take. Yeah.
If you talk about infrastructure, we're talking about infrastructure. Yeah. We're talking about investment in states post-COVID. What industry, what agency deserves more infrastructure support and rehab than MedTech and the FDA after the past year we've had? I think it's demonstrated. Yeah. We need to be investing in MedTech. We need to make sure the supply is good. We need to be investing in healthcare. We need to make sure our systems are in place. Absolutely. I mean, we're all talking about building roads and but the pandemic really pushed our limit to the max in many, many ways. So this should be a time where we're investing. So
we really realized, where we needed to have more investments and needed to boost things, because we got hit with this pandemic and we were like, wow, we need more healthcare. We need, innovations and, devices and vaccines. And, it definitely was, we spent a lot of money along the way, but it was definitely an effort. And next time we have some kind of health emergency, it'd be good to have more of, as you describe it, more of that infrastructure in place.
Exactly. So the honorable member from Mass Device and the honorable member from Device Talks, we vote in favor of this request. So let us move down the line. Number 4 on the Newmarker's Newsmakers.
Number 4 on the list, we've got Abiomed is buying Precardia, which they're a St. Paul-based company that's got a catheter-based system that treats acute decompensated heart failure. So Abiomed officials are saying this is just like another deal that'll like complement their company's product portfolio. So Abiomed picking up some extra technology this week.
Yeah, okay. And once again, we'll love someday to get CEO Mike Minogue on the podcast. We'll keep trying. He'll be taking over at Abiomed for Kevin Lobo if he already hasn't done so. Do they do that at the annual meeting? It's in the fall, or do they do that in the spring? But anyway, he's the incoming chairman of Abiomed. So big news.
So let's it'd be good to maybe he can come on and talk about the Precardia deal. That'll be good.
Awesome. All right, number 3. Awesome. Number 3 on the Newmarker's Newsmakers list.
Well, number 3 on the list. Do you want to hear the bad news or the good news first?
I'm a bad news first kind of guy, Chris.
Yeah, well, Abbott had to cut its earnings outlook, which caused them to get a stock hit this week. But the good news is it's because they don't think they're going to be selling as many tests
Okay.
because we're
All right.
crawling out of this pandemic. So, that's actually good news. So good news for the world, like a little bit tougher for Abbott, but they also pointed out that their organic base business growth is accelerating. So, I mean, even as like the more quote unquote normal things they might have been selling before the pandemic, that's picking up now. So, I mean, I think it sounds like Abbott's just fine over there.
And as it'll reflect in the number one Newmarker's Newsmakers, Abbott will be picking up some business in another area. So
that's a more sadder thing. We'll get to that.
Yeah. All right. Let us roll on to the big number 2 on Newmarker's Newsmakers list.
Number 2 on the list, I mean, just a few months ago, Medtronic veteran Mike Coyle left to take over iRhythm, which is, has this kind of like, wearable, heart rhythm monitoring tech that, is, supposed to be a big improvement over the traditional Holter monitors. We had him on here. We had him here on Device Talks weekly, and now he's resigned. He's resigned due to personal matters. And it was a pretty immediate announcement. I mean, it looks like he's going to be, sticking around to consult, but, CFO Douglas Devine is now interim CEO as the CEO search for iRhythm begins immediately.
Right. Well, you and I, when we heard the news, we called each other up. I called you, you called me, one or the other. We didn't call each other, but and sort of bounced off possible scenarios. It's certainly the kind of news that leads to guessing and speculation. And rather than have us do that, well, we're going to hear from Kaila Krum of Truist Securities. She issued a note pretty soon after the news, and I know she had been a fan of Coyle and of iRhythm. So let's hear what she has to say about this disappointing news, because Mike Coyle's a good medtech guy. Well, Kaila Krum, welcome back to the podcast.
Always a pleasure to connect with you, Tom. Thanks for having me.
Oh, thanks for taking the time. It's been a busy week. 2 big stories kind of came, well, I don't know if completely out of nowhere, but they were certainly, the timing was surprising. We'll hit upon them separately. The first that came down the pipes, and we'll just take them in chronological order, was Mike Coyle deciding that he would be leaving iRhythm. I noticed on your note that you sent out, you said right at the top that the resignation took us by surprise. So talk to us a little bit about what happened after you heard the news. You had a call with the company?
Yeah, never a dull moment with this one. Yes, iRhythm announced that Mike Coyle resigned, unfortunately, and Tuesday was his last day at the company. So it was a pretty quick turnaround from the news. And it said it in the press release. We had a conversation with the company. There were some personal matters battling for Mike's time and his focus right now. So the company's CFO will be taking on the interim CEO role just until they hire a full-time replacement. So I'm sad to see Mike go. I think his experience, I know you've spoken with Mike as well. I think his experience is nearly unmatched in the cardiovascular space. But he's leaving behind a really strong bench of leadership with, of course, Doug, and also their EVP of Strategy, Corp Dev and IR, Dan Wilson. He's really well liked by investors, really good guy, very strategic, high level thinking. So at least he's leaving a strong bench behind.
So, I mean, the company obviously hit some roadblocks or speed bumps or whatever obstacles coming your way these days after Mike had joined as CEO in terms of the changes to reimbursement, the reductions in reimbursement. So when this news comes down the pike, you're first led to wonder if it was just Mike sort of deciding to leave. And I don't want to go too deep down speculative lane, but in your conversation, again, you walked away with the understanding that this was not that this was something else.
Yeah, a lot of investors, and I think it's a great question. A lot of investors are asking, whether or not Coyle's departure is a signal of anything negative or new on the reimbursement front. And again, we've had conversations with them. They've very clearly said there's been, no notable developments since the earnings call in early May. It sounds like everything operationally is still going really well. Volume trends are seeing really healthy trends year to date. Management went out of their way to affirm its second quarter volume guidance. So, again, trends on that front are still really positive. But yes, reimbursement is still a big focus for investors. So we're hopeful we can get some more clarity on this topic over the next couple of months.
And you walked away from that conversation again with the understanding that this was something that Mike had to deal with separately. This was not an iRhythm issue.
Exactly. Yes. Yeah. I did leave with that clarity.
So the last question for about iRhythm is just this is a unique situation. You have a high profile company that had a new CEO that's moved on, that's facing some challenges. I'm trying to figure out whether this will be an easy role to fill because there's a lot of upside here, or whether they'll have a hard time recruiting a top tier CEO like a Mike Coyle type to take his place.
It's going to be tough to match, I think, Mike's level of experience. But I think as I look at this story, I do think that there is a lot of potential good news ahead. Again, in part, it's the volumes trending in the right direction. It's new product launches coming. They've announced that they have new products in the pipeline. There's updates coming in the asymptomatic population. So that's a new incremental market opportunity for them. So, I look at the stock here down almost 70% year to date, and I say it's probably a lot more likely to be higher than lower in the next 6 to 12 months. From my standpoint, it's a good time to, for someone to step in and think about things really, really strategically. Now, is it going to be easy? Again, reimbursement there's still a lot of questions around reimbursement. It's going to be something that management's going to have to manage through going forward. And again, hopefully we'll get a little bit more clarity on the topic over the next couple of months.
Oh, that's great. Now, it certainly would be, I think, a resume builder for someone who, if they're able to come in and turn it around, that'd be quite an accomplishment to have on your CV. Hey, Device Talkers. On June 8th, we're going to have a Device Talks Tuesdays presentation by Elcom. I've got a quick conversation with Mike Goglia. Mike's the regional market manager in the Americas for Elcom Silicones. And the topic of the conversation is solving medtech's challenges using medical grade silicone. So I asked Mike what the webinar will look like. Let's listen.
The way we have the webinar broken out, it'll be 3 separate sections that discuss real case studies that are real life situations that occurred with our customers. Mm-hmm. And we truly try to have a consultative approach when we deal with our customer base. They might be looking for one solution, but we could have other options to offer them. Okay. So the first case study we'll go into would be it's around a global company that we have a relationship with that was looking to transfer technologies to another site. So we were able to tweak our formulations and actually make a better product for them in the end that worked in both of their locations. The second one was a customer had come to us with a problem looking for a better adhesive for one of their medical devices. They were leaning in one direction, and we actually steered them in another direction that fit within their current manufacturing process, mm-hmm. and actually gave them a much faster cure time and much faster cycle time within their processing. And then the last bit we'll go into is more of an example about how we deal with our customers on the regulatory side with a medical device. Obviously, it's an ever-changing environment for our customer base, and we try to have expertise throughout the different zones we deal in, whether it be the Americas, Asia Pac, or Europe. And we have toxicologists on staff, we have regulatory personnel on staff.
Okay, it's going to be a great conversation. Join us on June 8th at 11 a.m. It's going to be a special time, 11 a.m. on June 8th. Go to devicetalks.com to register. All right, it was great to hear from Kaila Krum, Chris. Now let's go.
Number one.
Let's go number one on the list. Market. You said it before I did. You took the words right out of my mouth.
Here we go. Number one on the list. And this is really tough.
Yeah.
News. It's Medtronic is stopping sales of its HVAD system, and this comes after several clinical comparisons that found higher frequency of neurological adverse events like stroke, mortality, and Medtronic's been wrestling some with some various issues around the HVAD in recent months, including like a recall that involved 855 complaints and 8 injuries, and that was over like the device's ports. So and that it's just they're stopping the sales, they're stopping the distribution. They're setting up a monitoring program for those who already have the devices implanted, and just like a major device in the space being pulled from the market. The flip side, as you're saying, like Abbott is one of the other really big players in that space, and they didn't waste time putting out their own statement saying that they were, that they had the capacity to support growing demand in the space with their HeartMate 3 heart pumps. So it's kind of like Abbott's really stepping up here. Yeah,
well, I mean, there's a need for it, so I'm sure it's certainly it's not a decision that I'm familiar with, and I'm not really sure how it works. But I think it's good to ensure that there are options available for people who need this. So it's good that.
It struck me too that I know. The quote they had in the news release from the head of their medical circulatory support business always said mention the the Medtronic mission and I think commitment to safety, and they've in the past. I mean, they had I remember we had a talk at one of our actual Real Device Talks weekly shows in the past where we had someone going on the history of the recall of the Fidelis leads, and their founder Earl Bakken back then was like, he was going to take the biggest monetary hit over it. Was like, that's the right thing to do. People are in danger, and it looks like they're making a similar type of decision here. They just finally looked at stuff and said, you know what, we gotta stop the sales of this, because and my sense has always been that these types of pumps, I mean, I kind of lump them in with insulin pumps and other types of equipment that are, it's like they perform a really important role, but if something goes wrong, it just usually goes really wrong.
Right. Well, this is another opportunity that we have to bring in Kaila Krum of Truist Securities. Kaila also issued a advisory about the Medtronic news. So let's hear from Kaila Krum. I had a short interview with her about Heartware as well. How surprising was this to Wall Street?
Yeah, I would say, so you're right. I mean, Medtronic announced it's no longer going to sell its HVAD system. They're talking about how, their device could cause higher sort of adverse events like stroke, mortality compared to other devices. I mean, those risks and those concerns, in my mind, they're not new. I mean, Medtronic has had issued an urgent medical device communication in the past. So they've talked about some of these issues before, but the decision's a big one to discontinue the sale of this device. It's implanted in around 4,000 people today. And you also consider, this was more than $1 billion acquisition for Medtronic 5 years ago or so. So I think that they handled the situation really well, but yeah, I'm sure that this was a tough sort of internal conversation for them to have.
So what does this mean for its bottom line? I think you pointed out that it was less than 1%. The $141 million in revenue for fiscal year 2021 accounts for less than 1% of total company revenue. So it was a growing business, but Medtronic is all about growth and getting even bigger. How does this impact that?
In the grand scheme of things, I actually think that this step will make the company better over time. I mean, this, as you mentioned, the product's less than 1% of total company revenue. Financial impact is going to be pretty minimal. It's early to say whether or not this decision could have a halo effect on other products in the cardiovascular portfolio. But again, by doing the right thing for the patient, I think that should help their reputation in the clinical community. And I do think that matters, which, they're taking a long-term approach on this.
So where does Wall Street look to see that or find that growth going forward? Where are the hopes being hung on, or what are the hopes being hung on?
We're certainly, we're looking forward to all of these COVID headwinds unwinding
for sure
in the second part of this year. And there are several sort of tangible new product catalysts ahead. People are getting excited about robotics. People are getting excited about RDN. It's a little bit further out, but robotics, I mean, robotics will start to contribute this year. You know, it's starting to contribute, started to contribute in the most recent quarter internationally, albeit modest. But, you know, for the full year, you know, this full fiscal year, they're expecting 50 to 100 million in sales. And that could be, you know, double or triple the size in the following year. So these are all, there could be potential needle movers for the company, again, over time.
And I'm not sure, I didn't check before we started talking. Do you cover Abbott as well?
I do not.
You don't? Okay.
I don't cover.
But Abbott has obviously stepped up and said they'll be available and able to supply hopefully the implants, the HVADs that are necessary. I guess Mike, I don't want to speak. Yeah, I know you can't speak to Abbott specifically, but I guess it sounds as if the med tech sector and other companies will be able to meet the demand for these devices.
Yeah, I think, again, I mean, Medtronic is putting patients first and basically saying, go to our competitor Abbott for this product because it's the right one for your patient. So I definitely think that Abbott will take advantage of the situation and again, kind of do right by the healthcare system.
And how do you look at, and how does Wall Street look at the 4,000 patients that currently have the HVADs? Is there a concern about future litigation or anything like that? Is there something that needs to be managed downstream? You
know, I mean, at this point, I guess it's tough to say. I think Medtronic has said they're going to continue to support those patients. You know, they've worked with a group of clinician advisors to develop recommendations to reduce risk for those patients. And they've also talked about, you know, potential financial incentives for these patients, for their caregivers. So, I mean, I think they're managing it in the right way. They're being transparent with folks. So at this point, you know, I feel pretty comfortable that again, they're doing this the right way.
Great thoughts, Kaila. Thanks for joining us again on the podcast. We look forward to having you again in the future.
Great. Thanks again for having me.
All right, Chris, it was great to hear from Kaila Krum of Truist. Great to have her insights on the Newmarker's Newsmakers. And you are pulling double duty this week. You're also, you've got an interview that we're going to be running right now with.
That's right. On top of churning out all this news.
You are amazing. Who is your guest this week, Chris?
I'm just a machine this week, man. That's what happens when I, start drinking extra coffee, but, I did an interview with Laura Rector. She's the VP of Ambulatory Surgery Center Strategy and Digital Health at Smith & Nephew. And Smith & Nephew has been upping what they're doing around the whole digital ecosystem they put around their orthopedic implants. And I had a good talk with her about, some of their latest developments in their strategy and what they're doing.
Cool.
So if you're wondering where Smith & Nephew is going in the space, here we go.
Awesome. Well, it's a great interview, great conversation, and really presents sort of a different approach than some others in the ortho space. So let's hear this interview with Laura Rector of Smith & Nephew.
So it's been a month since Smith & Nephew launched the Aria Home PT. It's a telehealth device that provides interactive physical therapy remotely to a person's home. It's part of the overall Aria digital platform that Smith & Nephew introduced last year. Laura Rector is a Smith & Nephew executive who's helping to manage the launch of the new product. Laura is VP of Ambulatory Surgery Center Strategy and Digital Health at Smith & Nephew. Laura, welcome to Device Talks Weekly and Mass Device.
Well, thanks, Chris. I'm happy to be here.
Hey, so, to start out, whenever I, interview somebody, I always check their LinkedIn profile to see what they've done in the past. I saw you've worked for, some pretty prestigious companies in the past, such as, Wright Medical, which is now acquired by Stryker. I know you just joined Smith & Nephew in 2019, right before all of this stuff was getting launched. So, what got you to take the leap? What got you to join SNN? Can I call it SNN? Is that?
I think that works.
Cool.
Yeah, I came here, actually my 2-year anniversary is coming up. I was brought here by Skip Kill, who's the president of our recon business, to really take a look at the ASC market, the ambulatory surgery center market, and look at how we address it as an orthopedic company in a leadership way. And I came here for that opportunity. It's super exciting. I don't know how much you know about the ambulatory surgery center market, but it's growing massively, quickly. It presents an opportunity to do things differently.
It's a big trend, right?
Yeah, huge.
With the fact that we've got all these surgeries, you used to have to go to the hospital and you'd be stuck for days in the hospital. Now you're getting these ambulatory surgery centers where you can come in and out, get a procedure, get home.
Yeah, absolutely. And patients are definitely driving that trend. It's a different environment. Just because you need to have a total joint procedure doesn't mean that you're sick. Sick people go to hospitals, and people who need to have their joints replaced don't necessarily need to go to a hospital. So if they're appropriate for an ambulatory surgery center, they're choosing it. So patients are driving that a lot. And also, I'd say payers, it's a more cost-effective way to do these surgeries on healthier patients.
Right, yeah.
So it's about 40% less expensive to do that in the ASC. So the trends are by 2025, 50% of all total joint procedures will be done in the ASC environment.
I mean, ambulatory surgery centers definitely seem like a win for everybody. So, I mean, how does, the Aria PT fit into this?
Yeah, so we took a step back. It's one piece of it, right? Obviously, with the growth in outpatient total joint procedures, with the movement that we've just talked about, going from the hospital to the ASC, and that kind of being a really strong and accelerated trend, by the way, with COVID, it's just accelerated that trend.
Yeah,
for sure. Yeah,
totally.
So digital health is kind of one of the ways that we've identified a few years ago that we could serve the ASC market in a different and better way. So obviously we make implants, we make hip and knee implants. We're a medical device company, but our customers moving from the hospital to the ASC have greater needs. In a hospital setting, a surgeon is taken well care of and the systems are set up and in place. But in an ASC, they have new needs and pain points that we felt we could serve. So when we studied what was happening and all of these trends, it led us to digital health. And that's our products that you mentioned, Aria and Aria Home PT. So two distinct, different products, but digital health management platform, which is designed to connect that whole delivery of care experience through the whole episode of the outpatient procedure and the patient care.
Right. You're not just sending somebody home after they get a knee replacement and like wishing them well, like you're right.
In fact, we're actually thinking about them before they have surgery.
Wow.
So with our digital connected experience, we're looking at pre-surgery and what can we do for the patient and what can we do for our surgeons to help support that value-based care idea. So we're actually invested in this digital health technology, Aria, and Aria Home PT, which looks at the patient and says, how can we support you and perhaps not having to have surgery, right? Is there a way that we can work with you with our home PT device, our remote care device to strengthen the muscles, the tendons, whatever needs to be strengthened and possibly avoid surgery? And if they can't, then we have this whole system of care to help them to surgery, through surgery, and then the Aria Home PT, which is the remote physical therapy in their home on their own time. So we're looking at that whole continuum of care for the patient from pain to recovery. And at Smith & Nephew, we call it Life Unlimited, getting the patient back to the things that they love to do, whether it be gardening or swimming or, marathon running. The point of getting a new joint is to be able to get past that pain and get back to your life, the Life Unlimited.
I mean, I've written stories about, other telehealth products in the ortho physical rehab space. I mean, for example, like Zimmer Biomed has its My Mobility. I mean, what kind of edge does, Aria and the Aria PT have in this space?
Sure. We think it has, we've designed it with very distinct differences. One is it's built for the ASC. It's built for independent surgeons or these ASC centers. It's the only product that provides the total automation of streamlined activities that impact that whole episode of care that I was just talking about. Things like helping them select the right patient or enabling end-to-end patient education, communications throughout the process, tracking that patient and helping with the referrals to providers to help keep the patient engaged and satisfied, changing completely that patient experience. We've all kind of either been through a surgery or know someone who's been through a surgery, and it's somewhat of a disconnected experience, right? How you get to your surgeon is convoluted, and how once you leave your surgeon, what happens is a little disconnected. So having this digital asset connect those pieces helping manage these patients through that process, managing their exceptions, standardizing the care, more closely watching, what kind of care they have and enabling that surgeon to see the care that they're getting and red flags when they arise, being able to manage those situations, collecting data, which is really important right now, having that data to understand the outcomes of the patients and, managing costs and improving compliance to care. All these kinds of things are what digital health can do and what we're focused on. I think some of these other solutions that you mentioned aren't as comprehensive. Haven't done the deep dive to really understand what the pain points and needs are, not only for surgeons, but patients, and then address those pain points, which we think Aria and our digital health solution does for every customer in that stream. And, administrators, whether it be care navigators. Previously, we just really looked at the surgeon needs with an implant, but this product really addresses, all of the customers in this whole care pathway and provides ways to improve efficiencies, address lowering cost, improve outcomes, capture the data along the way, and these kinds of things.
I always thought it's a wild disconnect in medtech, the fact that, you're building things for, the actual, people who, need the devices or the implants, but, the customers are the health providers or the surgeons. But this kind of seems like a case where you can actually this digital ecosystem kind of, as they move to these ambulatory surgery centers, they want, to really up the care.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And so it's giving you a chance to really step in and, really, as you said, kind of follow the patients before, follow them after, really try to, improve the outcomes here.
It's not only the outcome, but the experience too. Right. And our patients are our customer ultimately, right? The implant is in our patient, and getting them back to life unlimited is our goal. So the patient is the ultimate customer. And when you look at it that way, you see beyond just that surgical episode of providing an implant and say, what can we do? I'm vice president over what we call positive connections. And that's our whole business area that focuses on everything that supports patients, our ultimate customer surgeons and payers even, through that whole surgical value-based medicine process. So taking a step back and saying beyond the implant, what can we do to provide better care and better outcomes? And that's kind of what we're focused on, and where digital health has led us to the best way we think to bring that connected care experience to look out.
When you mentioned payers, that's the other piece of the puzzle. The fact that Medicare has been kind of pushing toward more bundled payments and and kind of creating incentives for these new ambulatory surgery centers to follow, to kind of support the patient through the whole episode of care, as you said. So it's kind of that's playing a role in that as well, right?
Absolutely. Aria has a component which we call Site Select, and that's a tool to help guide surgery procedure location for hip and knee patients. Are they a better patient for the hospital or a better patient for the ambulatory surgery center? And that tool helps inclusion or exclusion, guidelines to help with that. Payers definitely have an incentive to want to see patients go to the outpatient setting. It's 40% less cost for them to have a patient in the ASC than the hospital. But it isn't always appropriate for that patient to be in the ASC just because it's a lower cost site.
Right.
They might not be appropriate. So we help with that with our tool that puts the guidelines in there and allows the surgeons to customize and have a way to guide them either in or out hospital or ASC. So yes, it does.
That's great. We're talking on a podcast right now, so people can't see what this Aria PT looks like. But it's kind of, I'll make sure to include a picture with the story we run with the podcast, but as well as what we're posting online. But it kind of looks like a flat screen with a camera. It kind of reminds me a bit like a Amazon Echo show, except it's kind of was it gray or white? It looks Apple-y, like a little.
Yeah, it's kind of yeah, definitely. It's a grayish white box. The Aria Home PT device. Yeah, the Aria is just it's a software solution. That's
just the whole software on the cloud. Yeah, but the PTs, is this something that's just getting bought for the patient, or is this something that surgery center lends to them to take home?
It would come to them, right? So before they have surgery, the device would be in their home, so they could have it ready when they come home from surgery, number one. And it is in their home, so it's ready for them to do their physical therapy in home on their own time, which is really the point of it. It's got a great NPS measurement, actually better than iPhones.
Wow.
So ease of use, functionality is super easy. It's over 90%, which is better than an Apple iPhone. So that's saying a lot. And because it's so easy to use, it has to be, the patient base in large part is over 70 years old in average, right? So you need to make it technology friendly enough that they will use it. And so the cool thing is the guide that we're looking at is compliance, right? So that's the biggest bane in healthcare is how do you get a patient to be more compliant? One, you put a device in their home because the overall kind of numbers, 65% of patients adhere to their prescribed PT. Sounds pretty good, right?
Yeah.
Until you realize that with Aria, it's 88.3%. So the compliance rate is much, much higher. It's a 35% increase. So being able to do it in their home on their own time through a device that's super simple to use is kind of a key to getting people back to that life unlimited we talked about. And increasing compliance rates. Patients love it. The patient satisfaction on the product is greater than 80%, which is a lot for technology and for that age group of people who are interacting and using that product.
Yeah, and I saw with the news release, it appeared it was out of Duke University did a randomized control trial. I mean, there's some pretty positive results with that, right?
Absolutely. Part of it is what we were talking about here with this compliance rate. I mean, that's a big part of it. Also, it helps with the efficiencies in the office, on how they manage these patients. So it's a great tool. I mean, the key is that it's easy to use, that it's not a replacement for physical therapy, but an enhancement to it. Allows them to do it, like I mentioned, on their own time in their own home. And it also tracks 25 different joints in the body. So the PT can go in and actually look at the video of the patient doing their physical therapy, and they can look at all the outcomes and results of how much frequency and time they used the device, how many repetitions they did, how well they did on those repetitions. So, and also the biomechanics of how much they're improving over time, right? So all of this data, because it's a data-based digital product as well, is something that they can now have that they wouldn't have had just from an interaction in the office. And then,
are you getting some machine learning, some AI involved? With this?
Yeah, we have AI learning involved in this product. So, it learns from the patients and can provide, them feedback. Like, for example, they stand in a zone and it's identified, and so they can track all the body motions. And when they get out of alignment, it stops them and says, you need to bring your knee back. It's too much forward, and kind of recorrects and teaches them. The avatar, Aria, she's so likable that the patients don't want to send the product back. They want to keep it.
Oh, wow.
And interact with her. So they really like her.
A lot better than a company that had a paperclip a long time ago. It's more popular than that.
Yeah. I would say that some of the other ways it helps is beyond the exercise that we've been talking about. It helps educate the patients with videos. You can do telehealth through the unit. So if you just want to interact with your physical therapist, you can do that. And it collects data while it's in action with the patient.
So it sounds like there still would be some, especially now that we're knock on wood, getting out of COVID, there still will be some going in to see a physical therapist, but this could supplement a lot of it.
And that's exactly what it's meant to be, is a supplement to the physical therapist. I mean, there's a reality that there's a shortage of physical therapists. Number one, there's about 27,000 shortage of physical therapists out there. So what that means is the access to care isn't necessarily there for everyone, especially if you're coming from a remote area to have your surgery and then going back home and there is no physical therapist near you. How do you how do you get that aftercare to get you back to that life unlimited?
Right.
So having this remote care device enhances that. They can meet, up front with their physical therapist. They can meet through telehealth with their physical therapists, and then they can do all the actions and activities prompted through the Aria Home PT unit to get that. And then knowing that the compliance rates are higher, you're not sacrificing quality by just being in your home and doing it on your own time. In fact, people are more apt to do their therapy when it's easy like that.
So, okay, this is probably a silly question, but there's a lot of consumer devices out there now that have a screen, they have audio, they have a camera. Why couldn't you just have piggybacked off one of those?
Yeah. So what really makes Aria Home PT special is that it's got a 3D camera. And a lot of the technologies out there that you're talking about don't have that.
Gotcha.
So what our technology does is it captures that whole 3D image. It can capture the biomechanics. It has AI learning in it, and it gives feedback in real time of whether they're doing the exercises right or not. So I think that's the difference is the 3D capability. Yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing. So that really kind of upset the fact that there's that 3D camera in there, and the fact that it sounds like very intelligent. Like you could be doing a physical therapy routine, and the device will actually say no, you're not doing it correctly because it's tracking your movements. And
absolutely,
that's really wild. That's so okay. So I'm just gonna pivot over a little. I mean, one really big story in the ortho space I've been covering is that, we're going to be seeing, the launch of, the OrthoTech Space's, first smart knee implant later this year. I mean, Zimmer Biomed's rolling that out. Stryker's looking to catch up. I mean, from your standpoint, what does Smith and Nephew do with all this? Or is it needed? Do we need to get that high tech? We're going to have a knee implant with sensors that talks to a box. Where do you see the company with this?
Sure. We're always looking at all the technology that's out there. And we think in this space, in the digital health space, we're definitely ahead of our competitors. They have not put the time, focus, or energy into something so comprehensive like we have. So we feel like technology definitely is a good investment. We're looking at all those same things, obviously, that other companies are to improve your implants. There's all kinds of things out there, wearables. There's devices that help with, infection and pain control and things like that, which I think are very up and coming, and wearables that give you feedback and data and collect information. What you're talking about are things that are actually in the implants. There are technologies that look at infection inside the knee as well, from sensors and things like that. So it is the future. Technology is the wave of the future, and an implant is not just an implant. It's the coatings that you put on it. We have Oxenium, which is a coating that we put on our knee products, which has the greatest longevity in the marketplace. Data behind it showing a 30-year knee, or with that coating, a hip even with Oxenium. So technology is and has always been the key to these devices and how well a patient does post surgery. Some of them come and go. That the technologies stay, they have relevance, and others not. I guess we'll see.
Yeah.
Right? Who's placed the best bet in the right place for our needs for the ASC? We feel like helping them manage this patient from the total experience, the total episode of care, and improving that patient experience, improving their ability to get better compliance after surgery. To have access to healthcare and physical therapy. That's our route, right? It doesn't mean that we won't be taking these other routes as well. We're looking at everything because our goal is to be the fastest growing, most innovative orthopedic company out there. And our focus on digital health is one of the ways that we're getting there.
That's great. Well, Laura, thanks for coming on.
Well, hey, thanks for having me. I appreciate you giving us the time and having interest in what we're doing over here.
All right, Chris Newmarker, the end is near. It is our time to request further followers on the massive social media machine. So how can folks find you on the social media?
The end may be near, but you can find me in the After Podcast life. Chris Newmarker on LinkedIn, just like a Newmarker. I'm also on Twitter at Newmarker.
Awesome. And I am on Twitter at MedTechTom. I'm also on LinkedIn, Tom Salemi. Please use those tags to connect with us when you do share this podcast episode on your own social media channels. Chris and I would enjoy being part of that conversation. And please
like, follow, subscribe.
Please do subscribe to this podcast on any major podcast channel, Amazon, Google, Spotify. We got the Apple. We got them all. So please.
Now that stuff's opening up. If you want to get a sandwich board and head down to downtown Minneapolis or Boston, do that too.
I think that's a very good use of our time for sure.
Oh, I think so.
Yeah, absolutely.
No, I was thinking getting some of our listeners to do that.
Oh yeah, we'll
see what they can do.
Please reach out to us on those social media channels if you want to run ads for the podcast.
Tom's got a sandwich board at his office. Just head over there. He'll hook you up. It'll be good.
That'd be great to have their support. But please do share this podcast on your social media channels. Please do subscribe, and of course, please do tune in next week. We'll have another great episode of the Device Talks weekly podcast waiting for you.
Take care. Get vaccinated soon.